Good morning, students. Yesterday we have started the new chapter, that is the reproduction or the reproductive system. The reproductive system is nothing but it is the ability of a human being to produce the next generation. The ability to produce the next generation is called reproduction. So reproduction, in male and female, there are different organs present for the reproduction. Specialized organs which produce the sex cells. So these sex cells are haploid number of chromosomes present in them, and these join together to form the zygote. The fertilization takes place and the zygote is formed, and it will be implanted in the female uterus. Then it will be developed. In human being, the males have different reproductive system. Yesterday we have studied about them. The first one is the external genital organ. The external genital organ or the external sex organs are penis and urethra in male, and the male reproductive organs are also called as the male gonads. They produce spermatozoa or the male sex cells or sperms, which are the male gametes. Then there is a pair of testes are present, and these testes are also endocrine glands. While studying the endocrine glands, we have studied about the testes. The testes produces the androgen, nothing but the testosterone, the male hormone. The male hormone androgen is produced. Thus, the testes are reproductive organs as well as the endocrine glands. Now, coming to the parts of the male reproductive organs, the first one is the external genital organ, the penis and the urethra. Yesterday we have studied the structure. Then internal genital organs, they are nothing but a testis, a pair of testes, vas deferens, seminal vesicle, prostate glands. So all these things we have studied yesterday. Now coming to the female reproductive organs. The female reproductive organs consist of external genital organs and internal genital organs. Apart from these two, there is one more called secondary genital organ, which is present in the females. That is a secondary genital organ. So the external genital organ consists of mons pubis or the mons verinus, first part. Second one is labia majora. Third one is labia minora. Fourth one is clitoris. Fifth one is the hymen. So this is the structure of the external genital organ. So this is externally present. This is the external genital organ, in which there are different parts present here. One more figure is here. You can see very clearly. And in the book also they have given, in the notes also they have given the figures. So please go through the notes also. So this external genital organ consists of mons pubis, that is a veneris, mons veneris. The second one is labia majora. Third one is labia minora. The fourth is clitoris. Then hymen. That is these constitute the external genital organ. Now, the external genital organ are collectively known as the vulva, V-U-L-V-A, vulva, and it consists of the following parts. They are nothing but mons pubis, the first one. It is the pad of the fat in the female lying in front of symphysis pubis. At puberty, this area is covered with hair, that is the pubic hair. So, during the puberty, the hair will develop here in the mons pubis, in the region of mons pubis, and the hair will be there. They are called as pubic hair. Pubic hair, they develop in the mons pubis. Now coming to the next one, labia majora, Labia, labia majora. They are two round and thick folds of skin which form the sides of the valves. They are the two round thick fold of skins which form the sides of the vulva. Now coming to the labia minora, they are two thin folds of skin which lie in the space enclosed by labia majora. Vestibule is the triangular area which is enclosed by labia minora. The vestibule contains the opening of urethra and vagina. The two openings, the urethral opening and the vaginal opening, are present here in the vestibule, which is present in the labia minora. Coming to the clitoris, the fourth one, that is the clitoris. It is a small erectile body which is situated at the apex of the vestibule. It is a highly sensitive structure and it corresponds with the penis in the male. So it is just like the penis in the male. So clitoris is a small erectile body which is situated at the apex of the vestibule. Highly sensitive body, highly sensitive structure, just like the penis of the male. But this is, clitoris is in female present. The organ is in the female external genital organ. Coming to the hymen, that is the last one. Hymen, it is a thin membrane which covers the vaginal orifice of virgin woman. In the virgin woman, a thin membrane is covered over the vaginal orifice or a vaginal aperture. It is usually perforated so as to allow menstrual flow. It is usually perforated and allows the menstrual flow. Coming to the internal genital organs. Internal genital organs are vagina, vagina, uterus, fallopian tube, ovaries. These are the internal genital organs. External genital organs can be seen from the outside. The reproductive organs which can be seen by outside are called external genital organs, whereas the reproductive organs of the female which are inside the body, in the pelvic region, pelvic cavity, they are called internal genital organs and they cannot be seen outside. Now, the internal genital organ, the first one is vagina. It is a canal made of muscular walls. It extends from vaginal orifice in vestibule below to the cervix of the uterus above. The vagina is lined by a thin skin which is thrown into a number of folds. A small projection of the vagina above the outer surface of cervix of uterus is called as fornix. Fornix. This is about the vagina. Next, uterus. The position of the uterus or womb. It is also called womb. Uterus or womb, W-O-M-B, womb, in which the fetus develops. So this womb or the uterus is a hollow muscular organ situated in the pelvis. It is present in the pelvis. It is covered by peritoneum and lies below the bladder, in front of rectum, behind in front of rectum, in front of rectum, behind. So parts are, the uterus can be divided into three parts. The first one is the fundus, second is body, and the third one is cervix. Fundus, body, and cervix. These are the three parts which are present in the uterus. So this is the uterus which is present in the pelvic region, uterus. These are the ovaries attached to the uterus. This is the fallopian tube, and fimbrae. This is called as fimbrae, finger-like structures which capture the ovum released by the ovary, and this ovum comes here and fertilizes here, and it will be implanted in the endometrial wall of the uterus. So now uterus we are studying. Uterus is having fundus, body, and cervix. Three parts are there in the uterus. So this is a vagina. We have already studied. This is vagina. Now the uterus is divided into three parts, that is the fundus, body, and the cervix. Fundus is the upper part which lies below the two openings of fallopian tube. Body is the part which lies between the fundus and the cervix. Cervix is the lower constricted part. The cervix is continuous above with the body of the uterus through an orifice called internal os. It is continuous below with the vagina through external orifice. So fallopian tubes are attached on either side of the fundus of the uterus. Coming to the ligaments of the uterus is supported and held in position by means of two ligaments. They are two broad ligaments which are folds of peritoneum. They extend between the sides of uterus and the pelvic wall. The layers of the broad ligaments contain fallopian tube, round ligament, blood vessels, nerves, and lymphatic vessels. The second one is two round ligaments which extend from the uterus below the fallopian tube to labia majora. Coming to the structure of the uterus, the walls of the uterus are thick and consist of three layers. The walls are three layered. Structure is there. Outer peritoneal layer called perimetrium. Then the middle muscular layer called myometrium, and the third inner mucous layer called endometrium. So three layers are there: perimetrium, myometrium, and endometrium. Outer perimetrium, middle myometrium, and the inner mucous endometrium. Functions of uterus. It plays an active part in the menstruation. So the uterus takes a very active part in the menstruation, and it receives the fertilized ovum and retains it during pregnancy. It receives the fertilized ovum or the zygote. The ovum and the zygote, ovum and the sperm, the male and the female sex cells, they unite together or fertilize to form the zygote, and this zygote is implanted in the endometrial wall of the uterus, and there it starts its development. So fertilized zygote is received by the uterus during pregnancy. Then it expels the fetus by contraction of its muscular walls. It pushes the fetus out of the out of the uterus after the complete development of the fetus. During pregnancy or during labor, the fetus comes out of the uterus by the contraction of the muscular walls of the uterus. So this is about the uterus. Then coming to the ovaries, next is ovary. The ovaries are 2 in number. They lie on either side of the uterus. A fold of peritoneum attaches the ovaries to the posterior aspect of the broad ligament. The ovaries lie below the fallopian tube of each side, so that there are a pair of ovaries, which are very important part of the reproductive organs of the female, because the ovum or the female sex cell is produced in the ovary. So this is attached to the fallopian tube, uterus. Now coming to the structure, the ovary contains a central soft tissue called stroma, an outer surface called germinal epithelium. So if you take the section of the ovary, you can see a soft tissue inside that is called stroma, and the outer surface called germinal epithelium. The germinal epithelium contains the germinal cells which produce the Graphene follicles or the ovum. The Graphene follicle is called ovum. The germinal epithelium contains the Graphene follicles. The Graphene follicles contain the ova. The ova are present in the Graphene follicles, the fully developed female sex cell. The ova are surrounded by a fluid called liquor follicle. Ovulation occurs due to the rupture of the Graphene follicle. Corpus luteum is the Graphene follicle which has liberated the ovum. After liberation of the ovum, the Graphene follicle becomes the corpus luteum. Functions of the ovary: it helps in the formation, development and liberation of the ova. The female sex cell ovum is formed, developed and liberated from the ovary. The ovary is the main organ for the development and the formation and the liberation of the female sex cell, that is the ovum, which contains the haploid nucleus, n number of chromosomes. So secretion of the estrogen by Graphene follicle. The cells of the Graphene follicle secrete the estrogen hormone. So thus it is an endocrine gland also. The ovary is an endocrine gland which produces or secretes the estrogen, the female hormone, from the Graphene follicle cells. Third one, secretion of progesterone by corpus luteum. The corpus luteum formed after the ovulation. The Graphene follicle cells, they degenerate to form the corpus luteum, and this corpus luteum produces the hormone called progesterone. So ovary produces estrogen and progesterone, 2 hormones, and it is endocrine in function also. Coming to the fallopian tube, uterine tubes, they are also called as uterine tubes. The fallopian tubes are 2 in number. They arise one on each side from the upper angle of uterus. The fallopian tubes are 2 in number. They arise one on each side from the upper angle of the uterus. They lie in the upper margin of the broad ligament of the uterus. Coming to the parts, the fallopian tube has an uterine end, an ampulla, a fimbrical end. So 3 parts are there. Uterine end, the first one is the uterine end. second one is the ampulla, and the third one is the fimbrical end. The uterine end is attached to the walls of uterus. The opening of this end continues with the cavity of the uterus. The cavity of the uterus is continued with the uterine end, which opens in the uterus. The ampulla is a slight enlargement near the fimbrical end. The fimbrical end, from the fimbrical end, little above, a small enlargement is present, and that is called as ampulla. The fimbrical end is the terminal portion of the fallopian tube. This end has finger-like processes called fimbrae, an opening with which gives access to the peritoneal cavity. So this receives the ovum released by the ovary. The ovary releases the ovum. The Graphene follicle comes at the end point after complete development, and it releases the ovum. The released ovum is captured by the fimbrae of the fallopian tube, and in the ampulla the fertilization takes place, and the sperm also comes to the uterus, and up till the ampulla it comes, and in this ampulla the fertilization takes place. After the fertilization, the zygote is formed, and it comes back in the uterus, and it will be implanted in the endometrial wall. Coming to the structure, the fallopian tube consists of outer peritoneal layer, middle muscular layer, and inner mucosa layer. The functions are the fallopian tube acts as a passage for the ova from the ovary to uterus. It acts like a passage for the ova from the ovary to the uterus. Usually, the fertilization of the ovum by spermatozoa occurs in the fallopian tube, that is in the ampulla region. Puberty in females. Puberty is the age at which internal reproductive organs mature. The internal reproductive organs, they mature during puberty. Puberty is the age. It is nothing but the age. ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳಿಗೆ 12-13 ವರ್ಷ ಆದ ತಕ್ಷಣ ಪ್ಯೂಬರ್ಟಿ ಬರುತ್ತೆ. ಆ ಪ್ಯೂಬರ್ಟಿನಲ್ಲಿ ಮೆನ್ಸಸ್ ಸ್ಟಾರ್ಟ್ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. ಆಮೇಲೆ ಆ ಸಮಯದಲ್ಲಿ ನಾವು ನೋಡ್ತೇವೆ, ದ internal reproductive organs, they will develop or they will mature themselves. It usually occurs at the age of 10 to 14 years, 10-14 ವರ್ಷ. In girls, it is marked by the onset of onset of the menstruation. It starts with the first menstruation. The puberty starts with the first menstruation. The physical and the physiological changes which occur at puberty are the physiological changes in the girl at puberty occurs, and they are: the first one, maturation of the ovaries, uterus and uterine tubes. The maturation of ovary, uterus and the uterine tubes, they are found at puberty. Then enlargement of vagina and breast. The breast and the breast and the vagina are enlarged. Then the third one, growth of axillary and pubic hair. The pubic hair and the axillary hair will be developed. Increased growth and widening of the pelvis. Pelvis will be widened. Onset of menstruation and ovulation. Onset of menstruation and ovulation starts at the puberty. Increased deposition of fat in subcutaneous tissue. So increased deposition of fat in subcutaneous tissue. Then the seventh one is mental and emotional maturity. Mental and emotional maturity occurs during puberty. Coming to the ovulation, Maturation of the Graphene follicle and liberation of ovum is termed as ovulation. Maturation of Graphene follicle and liberation of ovum. Maturation of the Graphene follicle and liberation of the ovum, female sex cell, is called as ovulation. The ovary can contain the ovary contains Graphene follicles. These follicles are about 40,000 in number. They are formed even during fetal life. The rest get degenerated, but all the follicles are lost at menstruation. Ovulation occurs due to the rupture of the Graphene follicle. This is stimulated by the luteinizing hormone, that is LH, of anterior pituitary. After discharging the ovum, the Graphene follicle forms the corpus luteum. Estrogen is produced by the corpus luteum. The estrogen hormone is produced by the corpus luteum. If pregnancy takes place, the corpus luteum persists. If the pregnancy takes place, the corpus luteum is remained up to 5th or 6th month of the pregnancy. If pregnancy does not take place, the corpus luteum regenerates and gets atrophied and forms corpus albigans. The corpus albigans is formed, which is whitish colored mass, and this corpus albigans, this is called a corpus albigans. If the pregnancy is not formed, the corpus luteum is not formed. If the pregnancy is formed, then the corpus luteum exists. Now, ovulation occurs at about the 14th day of the menstruation cycle. The ovum is discharged into the peritoneal cavity. It is carried to the fallopian tube by the action of fimbriae. The ovum gets fertilized in the fallopian tube and later gets embedded in the uterus wall. If the ovum is not fertilized, it is discharged through menstrual flow. Coming to the menstruation. Menstruation starts at puberty. It stops temporarily during pregnancy but permanently at menstruation at menopause. Permanently at menopause. So menstruation starts at puberty. It stops temporarily during pregnancy, but it is completely stopped during menopause. Menopause ಅಂದರೆ ವಯಸ್ಸಾದ ಮೇಲೆ, ಹೆಣ್ಮಕ್ಳಿಗೆ ವಯಸ್ಸಾದ ಮೇಲೆ menstruation completely stop ಆಗಿಬಿಡುತ್ತೆ. It occurs almost every 28 days. 28 ದಿವಸಕ್ಕೆ ಒಂದ್ಸರಿ ಆಗುತ್ತೆ. Menstruation involves periodic discharge of blood from uterine cavity. During menstrual cycle, the endometrium undergoes cyclic changes and it prepared to receive the fertilized ova, that is the ovum. These endometrial changes are also associated with changes in the ovary. Menstruation cycle can be divided into the following phases based on the changes occurring in the uterus. The first stage is destructive phase, that is a menstrual phase, the first stage. It is the phase lasting for first 5 days. First 5 days is the destruction phase or the menstrual phase. First 5 days of the cycle during which menstrual bleeding occurs. So this is the first 5 days wherein the menstrual bleeding occurs and it is called destructive phase or the menstrual phase. Then follicular phase, proliferative phase. This is also called proliferative phase, which is a follicular phase. It extends for the next 9 days. During this time, repair of the endometrium occur. At this stage, the Graphene follicle of the ovary matures. For this, the FSH of anterior pituitary is necessary. The follicle is matured during this phase in the ovary, and ova developed inside. The Graphene follicle now secretes estrogen around the 14th day of the menstrual cycle of the Graphene follicle, ruptures and releases the ova. The Graphene follicle now becomes corpus luteum. The luteal phase, that is the secretory phase. Third one is the secretory phase or the luteal phase. It is the phase lasting for the next 14 days. During this phase, the endometrium becomes thick and the vascular so as to receive the fertilized ovum. Now the corpus luteum secretes progesterone. For this, LH of the anterior pituitary is necessary. If the consumption occurs by implantation of the fertilized ovum, the secretion of the progesterone continues throughout the pregnancy. Otherwise, the corpus luteum begins to degenerate and does not produce progesterone. Later, the capillaries of the endometrium burst and menstruation occurs. The first day of the menstruation flows as flow is designated as day first of menstrual cycle. Then coming to the last one, that is the menopause or climacteric menopause. It is the cessation of menstruation which occurs in the woman's life at about 45 years age, when the female woman attains the 45th age, 45 to 50 age. During this period, the menopause occurs, means the menstrual cycle is stopped. It is caused by the changes in the concentration of sex hormones. The ovaries become less responsive to FSH and LH, so ovulation and menstrual cycle becomes irregular and stop ultimately. Menopause is accompanied by certain changes like flushing and sweating, shrinking of breast, atrophy of the sex organs, episodes of uncharacteristic behaviors. All these cause the menopause. Now coming to the last one, structure, that is the external genital organ. The secondary organ, the secondary genital organ. In female, the internal genital organs are present, then internal genital organs are present, external and internal, and there is one more, that is a secondary genital organ called breast. Breast is the secondary genital organ. Breast or the mammary glands. These are necessary accessory or secondary reproductive organs in the female. They secrete milk. The mammary glands are rudimentary in the males. Coming to the position, the breast lies on the pectoralis major muscles on both sides. On each side, they extend between atrium and the axilla, between sternum and axilla. From above downwards, they extend between the second and the sixth rib. Then the breasts are more or less hemispherical in shape. They contain a small prominence in the middle called nipple. Areola is a colored area which surrounds the nipple. Then coming to the next point, the breast consists of a number of lobules which are made up of columnar epithelial cells. These lobules are surrounded by a fat. These lobules give rise to the lactiferous ducts which pass towards the nipple. These ducts have an enlargement at the end which is called ampulla. At birth, the breast is poorly developed and it contains only a rudimentary nipple. At puberty, the breast starts developing and the gland tissue increases. This is due to the action of estrogen and the progesterone secreted by the ovaries. The active development commences at the starting of the menstrual cycle when there is deposition of fat and increases in the sac. After menopause, the ovaries lose their function and the breast also shrinks. Secretion of the milk. During pregnancy, the estrogen and the progesterone secreted by the ovary stimulates the growth of ducts and lobules of the breast. Later, these two hormones are secreted by the placenta and produces the same effect after childbirth. The secretion of these two hormones decrease. Now decreases. Now milk secretion is stimulated by prolactin of anterior pituitary. Oxytocin of posterior pituitary is responsible for milk ejection. So this is about the secondary genital organ, that is breast or mammary glands. So this is all about the reproductive system. So this ovaries completes the reproductive system, the male and the female reproductive systems. The male reproductive system contains external and internal genital organs, whereas in the female, external, internal genital organs and the secondary genital organ is also present, which is nothing but the mammary gland. So we have completed the complete structure and the functions of all the parts which are the sex organs in the female as well as in the male. So thank you very much.